Hi, Grade 11. This is Unit 2, Intro to Theme, Lesson 2, Interpreting Narrative Elements. Before we get into this lesson properly, take a moment to explore your possible interpretations of the story. So reflect on the story that you've read and the thematic guiding question that you chose. And sit down and pretend that you had to write an essay on that theme and that text. I'm suggesting that you give yourself about 5 minutes to explore your ideas. You can take longer or longer if you would like. You could talk with a partner who's read the same story or use free writing, listing, some sort of exploratory writing. The more you take time to figure out what your tentative understandings are, the more useful the rest of this lesson will be. That's because you'll be able to apply the concepts as a way to understand and clarify your understandings, rather than getting overwhelmed with trying to do all the 6 different skills all at once. Okay. The purpose of this lesson is to examine the skills and concepts in the interpreting text's narrative competency. So here are the 6 outcomes in this cluster of skills. These 3, the ones that are highlighted in green, are explicitly linked to discussing theme. And those are the ones that we'll start with. So the first one, this is a big one. I can construct and explain meaning from narrative texts by describing the relationships among plot, setting, character, atmosphere, and theme. Pause the video here to quickly go over these brief definitions of those words. Okay, hopefully you did that. If you're ready, we're going to try this with an example. The example that I chose was Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. Hopefully you guys are familiar with that text. If not, just pay attention to the process, I guess. So you start with your tentative understanding of the theme. So Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire has something to say about evil. That's where I started with. How does evil show up in the plot? Well, something that was interesting and significant was that it shows up in the prologue, and then it kind of continues between the main action of the text where Harry keeps dreaming that he is linked to Voldemort, and he freaks out about the fact that he is maybe evil. Yeah, so the book is kind of bookended by this thread, this motif of him dreaming about being evil. Something that happens with the social setting in this text is that Hermione discovers that the house elves are basically enslaved by Hogwarts. There are these 2 characters that use shape-shifting magic to hide their evil intentions in plain sight. And then atmosphere. This is why I chose this book. It's tricky to find texts where the atmosphere is directly linked to the theme, but in The Goblet of Fire, this book makes a drastic shift, marks a turning point in the series. There's a drastic shift from being adventurous and whimsical to being menacing, violent, and dark. So, working with these concrete aspects of the text and trying to figure out how the thematic topic shows up in each of these aspects, I was able to kind of refine my initial understandings and come up with a statement of theme. So here, the most insidious threat to society is not a villain from outside the community. Rather, we must be vigilant to the evil that hides itself within individuals and the institutions of ordinary life. This skill lends itself really well to the idea of close reading, because basically all you're doing is rereading the text, examining the main elements of the story one at a time. And as you describe the elements and the details from the text, you should find that you're able to explore different aspects of the text's themes. This is a good place to pause. Consider how you could use this skill to analyze the lamp at noon. So if your thematic guiding question was about how a person's relationships with others affects their ability to make free choices. Think about how that plays out in The Lamp at Noon, with the plot, the setting, the characters, and the atmosphere. Or if you chose the other guiding question, think about how characters see themselves affects their ability to make free choices. And again, apply that to the plot of the story, the setting, the characters, and the atmosphere. Okay, the next big skill is to construct and explain meaning from narrative text by comparing characters, their personality traits, their roles, their relationships, their motivations, attitudes, values, and archetypal qualities. When it says compare, we want to actually compare and contrast. So you want to think of how they are the same and how they are different. When you have two characters that have a similar role in the text, like for example, two sisters in 10 Things I Hate About You, often that means that they're character foils. They're set up to reveal something about each other because of the differences between them. The word foil comes from the idea of a mirror, like that being able to see your reflection in a mirror. You're same but different. Take a moment to pause here to see what each of these words mean. Okay, and in the next slide we'll see how we can apply that to two characters who are similar but also very different. So the two sisters, if you haven't seen the film, which you should, it's great. Kat is the one on the left, played by Julia Stiles, and Bianca is the one on the right. And they're really set up to contrast each other. But thinking about the differences between them and the way that they make choices in the text, especially towards the end of the text, helped me come up with this statement of theme. Often, young people begin to construct their identities as a response to the gendered expectations they encounter from society. Some choose to consciously perform these expectations, and others work to actively reject them. In both cases, the individual is compelled to exaggerate some aspect of their personality and hide others. I guess I didn't finish this. Yeah, but you can see that just from the image here. They're both kind of they've constructed the way that they present themselves based on these ideas of what it means to be a young girl. Bianca performs the femininity, and Kat rejects all of those aspects of femininity. By the end of the film, spoiler, Kat embraces the softer side of her emotions, and Bianca toughens up. So they're each able to find their true selves by... This is another good place to pause and just experiment with the skill a little bit. So The Lamp at Noon only has two characters, other than the baby. Compare them. Paul and Ellen, how are they the same and how are they different in their personality traits, their roles, their relationships, their motivations, their attitudes, their values, and their archetypal qualities? Give it a try. Okay, so the last big skill that links narrative elements to theme is, I guess, these two. They're linked. Analyzing and assessing character and characterization, and explaining how the choices and motives of characters may provide insight into the choices and motives of self and others. One way to approach this is to think about the character arc of a story. So many stories are structured this way to show how a character changes as a result of the plot. And the key moments of these stories are often about explaining the reasons why, or maybe not explaining, but that's where the interest of the film is in the audience figuring out why they do what they do. So this little cartoon image here is from Breaking Bad. It's not from Breaking Bad, it's a representation of Breaking Bad. So thinking of who he was at the beginning of the text and who he becomes at the end of the text tells you something about theme. So at the beginning, he's a meek and mild chemistry teacher. You can see that he kind of sees himself as a loser. And when he is diagnosed with terminal cancer, he starts selling cocaine. Is it cocaine? Or is it... Okay, sorry guys, I had to look it up. It wasn't cocaine, it's meth. Anyways, so he starts selling meth, and at first his motivation seems to be noble. At least that's what he says. He wants his family to be wealthy when he dies, so that they're taken care of. As the story progresses, he becomes seduced by the power and the wealth that he experiences in his secret life of crime. He commits more and more crimes and violence, but he continues to be able to rationalize and justify his actions. The audience starts to feel like he's in too deep, but you start to feel like, oh, maybe he'll turn it around, maybe he'll come out of it. But then he reaches this breaking point, this key moment, like a moment of crisis or epiphany is how it's referred to in text structure. There's a moment where he has to do something. He is morally compelled to do something, but if he doesn't do it, then it becomes more convenient for his criminal actions. Sorry, I'm trying to say this without spoiling it. In the if you want to just see what the thing is, go into the slides and click over the highlighted portion. You can see the text that's been blocked out. Anyways, he makes this horrible choice that's impossible to rationalize on any moral grounds. And you can see in his face in that moment, he's just horrified at himself for the whole time. And from that moment on, you can see that he's not going to be redeemed. The Walter White persona, the person that he was, becomes his secret life, kind of starts to fade away, and the criminal mastermind persona of Heisenberg starts to take precedence. So it's another theme about evil, I think. Individuals who view themselves as moral can often defend evil actions by claiming that they are motivated by moral reasons. However, when these rationalizations become insufficient, the individual may choose to abandon their good identity in order to continue reaping the rewards of their evil actions. So again, I'd like you to take a moment to pause and try out these two skills with the lamp at noon. So analyzing and assessing character and characterization, the way a character is revealed to you, in terms of your guiding questions, either about how you see yourself or how your relationships with other people affects your choices. Or explain how the choices and the motives of characters may provide insight into how real people make choices and are motivated. So think of the choices that Paul makes, think of the choices that Ellen makes, and see if you can find a link to theme in either of those. So for this competency, these are the three big skills that are important to look at. If you can explain why and how characters change, if you can compare and contrast characters, especially pairs of characters who seem to be set up in order to be compared, and if you can describe the relationships among plot, setting, character, atmosphere, and theme, then you're laughing. You can figure out just about any theme from any text. So your activity for this lesson is basically to redo what you did with the lamp at noon with the short story that you chose to study earlier this week or today. So practice using these three main skills and strategies to jot down your ideas and your interpretations about that text. You're going to use these interpretations for the next activity, which is developing your ideas. So make sure that you write them down. You can work on your own or with a partner.